So for those of you who joined late, I want to introduce you to Charles. And Charles is very well known by some of you as the Tire King. So he started his life. Here we are. He started life with just $400 invested in his tire business and started growing that through being the magical manifestor that he is. Ended up creating really, truly a tire empire. And one of the things he's known for is these commercials that he did, which you can find if you Google him on YouTube. You'll see these hilarious commercials of him dressed as King Tut or flying in a superhero suit, and they're all like very low budget, hilarious commercials.
Yeah, that's correct. Low budget was right.
But they apparently played all the time. So if you were on the East Coast, you knew his face. So, yeah. And then, so Charles, I will let you, if you wouldn't mind telling us about what changed. I know you just wrote your book about this, but tell us how you came to your spiritual nature now that you are, as I said before, a teacher, as well as the CFO of Delphi University, which is a phenomenal mystery school, which I went to a few years ago and had a beautiful experience. So we'd love to hear it from you, your perspective.
Well, I was certainly I was all caught up in my business, as most entrepreneurs are, and I was having a public relations crisis, and so I really felt like it wasn't fair, and I really felt like a victim. And I was feeling sorry for myself. So I'm out on my property the next morning, and I was in a golf cart, and I stopped for some reason under a banyan tree, and I looked up, and I remembered reading that Buddha got enlightenment under a banyan tree. That's about all I knew about the Buddha, that he got enlightenment under a banyan tree. And so I look up and I say, why God, why does this blank always happen to me? And it was like I got hit by a lightning bolt. Man, the energy just like rattled me. It just shook me wildly. And out of my mouth come the words, because you have purpose, Charles. And I said, what? Who is that? And the answer came, you know who it is. And all of a sudden I'm having a conversation with God. And I went through these periods of, excitement. Oh my God, it's God. And fear. Oh my God, it's God. And I started to get some understanding and some revelations there. And God came to me, and, either as soon as I could ask the question, the answer came out of my mouth in a voice that wasn't mine, which is pretty weird, by the way, when words come out of your mouth and you're hearing them for the first time, or I got it intuitively. And so God asked me if I was ready, and I said, well, ready for what, and ready to do what you came here to do. And I said, and I started to talk him out of it. I tried to talk him out of it. You can't talk that out of much, trust me. And so I tried to talk him out of it, and I said, oh God, look, you can have anybody. Why would you want me? And I said, why don't you find somebody more suitable? And of course, he came back with a simple answer. Well, but Charles, I'm asking you. So we went on and on about, and I'd ask him some questions. He would give me some answers. And, the amazing thing was I could feel his personality, his personalness, and also his grandeur. And it was really quite stunning. And I'd say, oh my God, it's God. Oh my God, it's like, is it really God? And so this went on for, I don't know how long. And I finally said to him, after I was clear I wasn't going to talk him out of it, I said, look, God, I don't know why you want me. I don't even know if this is real. But if you're sure it's me you want, I'm asking God if he's sure. And I said, and I'll do whatever you want me to do. Thy will be done. And he says, thank you, my son. And I said, well, and I could feel him leaving. And I said, whoa, wait a minute. What do I have to do? And he said to me, you are to learn about me and about you and teach others who they are too. And then he said, I love you, son. And boom, he was gone. So immediately I started to run up to the house, tell my wife, and then it hit me. And I went, oh my God, so this is what it's like to go crazy. And so he came 2 other times that day. He came once again, he came in the afternoon, and he came again at dusk. And each time he asked me, I tried to dissuade him. And but I finally acquiesced and agreed. So when it was all over, I decided I wasn't going to tell anybody, because probably nobody would believe it anyway. And but my whole life changed from that moment on. Nothing was ever the same. Within within a few months, I was, I started doing past life regression with Brian Weiss down in Miami. And I was led to Delphi, but of all things, the spinning brochure. And I was in a bookstore. One of my sons called me up and said, Dad, there's a new age bookstore. It's opened up on the way home. He said, I know you're into that crap. So I thought I'd call you and tell you. So I go in the place, and a woman looks at me, and I'm thinking she's recognizing me from my commercials, but that wasn't it at all. And she says to me, you need to go to Delphi. And I said, what's that, like some place in Greece? She says, no, it's a spiritual school in the mountains of North Georgia. I don't know why I'm telling you this, but I'm compelled to tell you. So she said, I might have a brochure. And so she came back about 10 minutes later with a piece of paper that said in-depth channeling at Delphi University. So I took that piece of paper, and I took another stack of papers there. You know, I was collecting then, you know, workshops, this, that, and the other. And so I took them to my office, I put them on my desk, and I added them to the pile. And then later that morning, I walked in, I tripped, I caught myself on my desk, the pile goes over the side, and this piece of paper pops out and it spins 3 times, like interminably so. And I said, and I just blew it off. I had that just an anomaly. An hour later, my administrative assistant walks in. She does the same trip, lands on the desk, hits the pile goes, and the piece of paper pops out, and it spins slowly 3 times. And I said, Beth, did you see that? She said, yeah, that was weird. I said, yeah, I know. Call that place. I'm going to go there. That's how I got to Delphi. I didn't even know what they taught. And, you know, it's some months later, about 6 months later, I came to the school. 3 months later, after that, I came back for good. And I've been here for the last 25 years. Having so much fun. And but no, I really I found my calling, and I found my purpose. You know, I mean, I don't think I came to this lifetime to be the tire king, although I had a good run, but I think it prepared me for really what I'm doing now.
Yeah, it's such a good story, and I got to tell you, so I when I came there, I met Kimberly, which is your wife. So you guys are both there running Delphi, and it's interesting to hear sort of the whole backstory of how you arrived. So how did you discover, in terms of what you felt like your purpose was? How have you lived and expressed that purpose? And we talked a lot about, like, one of the things you mentioned you speak about is where you see the future of what is our human evolution? Where is that heading? So tell us about that. Like, how do you get to that as part of your purpose?
Well, for me, it started, I started taking classes. I started doing some therapy, and I took Reiki. And so my brother-in-law calls me up, and he worked for me. So we talked a little bit, and he said, did you hear about Stuart's baby? And I said, yeah, I heard the poor thing is they're just hanging around waiting for her to die. And the baby was born 6 months premature. And I mean, you know, the only Reiki healings I was doing were on my children with athletic injuries, you know. And so I said to Scott, I said, well, maybe I can help her. She was born on the same day I was, so I took that as a sign. So I snuck into St. Mary's Hospital in West Palm. Excuse me, good Sam. I always say that because Mary was at the hospital. So anyway, the plan was I was just going to pose as the grandfather, and I was in the pediatric ICU. And I'm telling you, I walked in there, I was the invisible man. Nobody saw me. Nobody said boo. So I was guiding this little thing. She was this big, and you could see she was just struggling. She was bleeding from the brain, and so they were just waiting for an hemorrhage to. She couldn't anymore. And so I put one hand in there, and I didn't touch her, but the energy came out of one hand. And so Mother Mary is behind me now, telling me what to do. She's, go ahead, Charles, it's okay. It's all right. And put your other hand in there. So I was getting the play-by-play from Mary, which I thought was incredible. And maybe that's why I keep calling it St. Mary's, although there is another hospital, West Palm, called St. Mary's. Anyway, so, and, you know, I could tell the energy was making her more uncomfortable. You know, she's, and then she just like settled into it. And I touched her head, and I had her feet. And I had that little thing in my hands for, I don't know, an hour, maybe, I don't know the time. And the energy just, when it was finished, just stopped. And I knew she was going to be okay. So I told the parents, I said, look, don't worry about her. She's going to be fine. In 21 days, they're going to release her to you. 21 days, as fate would have it, 21 days later, they did. And she just graduated from college. She's I think 24 now.
Wow.
Or 25. And I was hooked. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm hooked. You know? And so it's like the casino, you know, you win the first time, you know, you're hooked forever. After that healing, I was kind of hooked forever. And I really understood that, you know, that I was going to be a healer and that I was able to do it, you know. Anybody could be a healer who decides to be one. They just, you know, we all have spiritual gifts and abilities. It's incorporated into our physiology. And now I'm going to get to your question. You know, the human journey begins long before Earth. You know, it really began with the formation of the solar system. And along the way, there were these different planetary formations where we obtained certain things. So the first one of those was on ancient Saturn. We developed an etheric or light body. And really, we were just simply projecting into rocks. And hey, I'm here and I'm there too. But that was kind of a big deal because it created separation, created duality, created bilocating, created karma. We got so good at projecting into the rocks, we couldn't get them back. So the solar system is forming, and the ancient sun all of a sudden forms out of the mass. And the element of air is added. So on Saturn, where there is fire, on the sun, there's air. And we developed the beginnings of a mental body. And on that sun evolution, what we did was we literally incorporated these spiritual abilities, these psychic gifts, the gifts of the archangels, into our physiology. So it's part of what we are, it's part of who we are. So the sun ultimately pulls out when their job's done. Everything compresses to water, and then sound vibration is vibrated into the water, and it causes the heavy metals and the elements in the water to form in certain formations based on the sound. So that's the beginning of the life forms. And finally, when Earth forms, you know, we just sit in there briefly and come back. And ultimately, we make that final descent. And when we come down, you know, we're not very well formed. We're not very physical. You know, our physicality comes through our selfish behaviors that are ultimately going to come. But on that moon, when we're in that moon, we lived in a dream consciousness. So we dreamed about being human before we ever were. And when we hit the ground running. You know, we had that humanity thing all worked out. So we separate, basically. The plan was to separate so that we could become sense beings. So early man, Atlantean man, bears not a lot of resemblance to man today. As humans evolve spiritually, they also evolve physically, and they change. The bodies we're carrying now are much different than the post-Atlantean bodies at the fall, which was, most people estimate, about 50,000 years ago. So as we develop spiritually, we also change physically. So our ultimate future is going to be less physical, more spiritual beings, you know. And ultimately, some of those subtle bodies, you know, we have an etheric body, a light body. We have an emotional body where our feelings are stored. We have a mental body where we think, where our ego exists, and where we really can create an identity. Without that mental body, without that emotional body, you can't be somebody. So we were dreaming of being human before we ever were. And so we were feeling, we were thinking, we were desiring before we even had a body. So the physical body was the last thing we got. And as man evolves now, his physical body is ultimately going to change. You know, Christ talked about it in his first healing, his first miracle at the wedding feast of Cana. And he talked about this magnificent garment of light. And does anybody really think he was talking about the bride's dress? You know, he was really talking about the mystical marriage. And that's really the unification of masculine and feminine within. And that produces wholeness in Christ consciousness. Yeah. So and from that, he talked about how radiant the garment was. He was talking about literally the spiritual light body that ultimately was man's destiny. And so we're going to see some changes. You know, some aware people now are having glandular issues because of some of these changes. I know I had a saliva gland that kind of went blue a little bit. Thank God it's back down. But you're going to see we're going to become lighter. The light body is going to be a reality. The coding of the non-coded DNA, you know, we have all this excess DNA, and it's not there for no reason. It's there for a good reason, which is ultimately it'll be activated as our light bodies are activated. But really, the journey and the payoff for the journey is Christ consciousness or God consciousness. You know, I'm not talking about Jesus. I'm talking about that aspect of the Godhead that comes into expression and literally manifests all of us.
So what would you say? So I have like 50 questions from there. I just want to go back to everything you just said and then ask
Okay.
questions about each place.
We're
One that
not,
jumps out, one that jumps out is how is our current body different from the Atlantean body?
well, we're a little lighter. We're not as dense.
So
The
we're
purpose of
more dense?
Atlantis, we're not as dense as, well, maybe we are. Maybe we're more dense. The purpose of Atlantis, its role. Well, let me just back up a little bit. Avenues, theaters of existence have been created so that we could gain certain attributes, and when we gain them, we leave. We move to the next place of existence. So Atlantis was about forming the physical body. When we first came to Earth, we were more etheric than we were physical. But through selfish behaviors, actions, we become denser and more physical. Why? Because we are lowering our vibration through our expression or lack thereof. And so for Atlantean man, when Atlantis sunk, it didn't sink, it was flooded, the great flood. That's what consumed Atlantis. And but it was designed solely so man could form that physical body. And then when it was accomplished, Atlantis was no longer needed. And so it was literally taken out of the how do I say it, the arena. So Atlantean man wasn't that bright either. We lost our spiritual connection. We didn't lose it, but it was temporarily, just call it disabled. So it's temporarily disabled. And so here we are. And the reason that was done was so we could become sense beings, so we could learn to feel.
Okay.
Spiritual beings don't have a depth of feeling until they've had some type of interaction with other spiritual beings or other human beings for that matter. We're spiritual beings in human experience. We're not trying to be spiritual. We're trying to figure out this human part. So as man evolves, things are going to start to change. They already have in certain people. First of all, we're developing more chakras, more energy centers. Chakras are the distributors of life force energy. So the Christ chakra, the high heart, the thymus, is open and operating in most people. It's not fully functional, and it won't be till we attain Christ consciousness. But so we're seeing new chakras, seeing the causal chakra behind the head, one hand width from the crown. Causal chakra is where divine thought comes in, unfettered by our personalities. We have the clairaudient chakra, which is below that. That's where we're going to hear divinely. I get to hear that God's voice all the time now, when it's open, which it's a slow process. So we're developing more chakras, so that we can experience the divine more significantly. Ultimately, when we attain Christ consciousness, and that's the payoff. That's the purpose of the journey, is to develop God consciousness. And what do we get? We get God consciousness. What is God getting? That's a bunch of God conscious children. So everybody wins in that one. But it's not an easy thing, And we're never going to be perfect, but the journey's about wholeness.
Yeah, that is so interesting about the because I channel as well, and I channel from the angelic realm, and they've been telling me that people are going to be seeing and having physical experiences of angels, like that everybody will, which makes sense is what you're saying in terms of the chakras, these different chakras developing. So what do you see as being in terms of a timeline for that? When do you think that would actually,
in terms of what?
A timeline for that? When would you think that would start to show up for people?
Well, it's going to happen at different times for different people. The journey, it's an individual one, basically. So some are going to be out front of it. Some may never get into it, so it's really about, in each individual, it's about what we do to heal ourselves. Look, some say if you want to go up, you got to go down.
Yeah.
So the key to evolution for humans is in the lower chakras. The desire body, the emotional body, the mental body. These things all can, they help us and enable us to create an ego and an identity, but they also hinder us. And like the desire body, that's man's undoing. The story of Prometheus, who stole the fire. With fire in Greek mythology represented desire. So Prometheus stole the fire, and as his punishment, he was chained to Mount. I always forget the name of that mountain in Delphi, Greece. And but he was chained to the mountain, and each day the vultures would come and consume his liver. at night he would regenerate his liver, only to be consumed again by the vultures the next day. And so what I was telling us, really, and the lesson of the myth was that no matter how many desires you have, you can't fulfill them.
Mm-hmm.
The desire body can't pay off. It has no way to deliver. The only
Mm-hmm.
thing it can deliver is more desire. And so when man, so one of the evolutionary tracks that's going to happen, and this may be the end, the last one, is the desire body will evolve. It's our strongest energy, the desire body. So it'll evolve from the selfish desire body of the individual to the desire body of God. What's the difference? The desire body of the personality wants what it wants for itself.
Mm-hmm.
The desire body of God wants all good things for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the evolution, there's the genus of it, and also we're going to start to see our bodies become lighter, more etheric. The etheric body was never controlled by us because of the potential to abuse it. But God in his wisdom kept that connection with us so that when we were ready, there would be a spiritual connection. So the etheric body is what gives life to our physical body. It's what animates us.
Yeah.
It's what enables us to live. And so the etheric body is going to become more and more prominent. And when that happens, you're going to see some interesting differences. We'll start to take our nourishment from the air, from the prana that's in the air, as opposed from eating food and eating standard types of food. I went to a workshop with Drunvalo Melchizedek once, and he talked about how he was with a Tibetan master for 6 months, and he never saw him eat anything except dark black coffee and little cheroot cigars. So really, what he was doing was he was taking his nourishment through the prana, through the life force energy that exists in the air. So we're going to see the etheric body come before, I think. And not only you'll be eating less and eating differently, but you'll have capabilities that you don't have as a physical body, the ability to think yourself to another place, for instance. I don't think that's unreasonable, an expectation.
Do you
And
think? Go ahead.
ultimately, the desire body will literally lead the pack, because if you have a devoted desire body, you've got this real spiritual power.
So do you think we will drop our physical body as the etheric body becomes
Not drop it, but it's going to become lighter and lighter. You're going to lose a lot of weight. That's for sure. For anybody who's ever wanted to diet and was successful, hang in there, kids. There's your chance.
And so you think it becomes less prominent, or do you think like we physically start looking different? Like you think that we
It becomes less physical. You'll look similar, but it becomes less physical. You'll be lighter, literally lighter.
Oh, okay.
The body will become a reality.
Yeah. And then right at the end of what you just said, what did you say right before I asked you that question? So you were starting it. You had mentioned that.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There was something you had just said that I wanted to ask you about. And it was so interesting too. So you see us progressing in this way that we become, so the etheric body becomes stronger and it starts sort of taking over. We don't need to, we become sort of like breatharians or living off of prana. Where does that, in terms of our evolution, and we are able to travel, but how does that work in terms of us moving from one place to another? And I've been asking about this in my own channeling about how does this work? Because I've been told that we will be able to move and travel like
etherically.
Etherically, yeah. But they said, when I asked, they said that it would be liquid, and I didn't understand what that meant, and I couldn't get any clarity on it. Do you know what that means?
Liquid, they were saying that basically you just have to think and feel it, and it happens. Right now, for instance, I do distance healing, so you may too. I literally project to where the person is.
Yeah.
I can sense them, I can see them, I can feel their energy. But I've literally sent part of myself somewhere else.
Yeah.
I think we're going to be able to take the whole thing somewhere else.
Yeah.
Or maybe even be in two places at one time. We do that now.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
It's just, it's like we're driving 1932 Fords, Model A Fords, and we're going to move into Teslas or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you?
I think we're already doing it, but I think it'll be more pronounced.
So do you think
and more effortless too?
Yeah. that's amazing. Do you think this process of evolution, like I know that there's things shifting in terms of the planet itself is shifting, that there's stuff happening in terms of what's happening around us that's going to help us to have this evolution, but do you see this as something that we are doing, or you see this as something that's happening externally that's helping us to grow in that way?
I think it's both. If you're not actively healing yourself and raising your vibration, it's not going to come. You know, and you have to, that's right. You have to be the participant, or spirit's just not going to reach out and click their fingers and change where you are.
Mm-hmm.
It's up to you to determine. It's up to you to decide who you are and how you are. It's kind of interesting. I was having a conversation with God not long ago, and I said, and I was talking about the darkness, and I said, God, how could you create such yucky things, yucky beings? And you know what he said?
Huh.
He said, Charles, all of my children are created in love. They recreate themselves into what they become. Boy, I'm telling you, there's chills on that. It's so true. And so it's up to the human being. It's an individual journey. In our world today, you're seeing a lot of Luciferic energies at play, a lot of group consciousness, group thing, group behaviors. So human beings are more and more, how do I say it? They're going to be tasked to choose, who they are, what they are, and figure that out,
Yeah.
So, and I think, look, everybody has the shot. If you want to grow and evolve, but you have to want to. And, when you do that, you have to give up certain, how do I say it, shortcomings, desires, maybe is a good word to say it, that lower expression has to be replaced with a higher one. So the key to evolution, I think, is in the low chakras. It's how you raise yourself up, to raise your vibration. And if you can get that kundalini to rise up, connect with the eternal light truth, that's essential.
So that was it. That's what you were saying that I was forgetting. You made a comment that the desire body was, and people don't talk about the desire body. That's even a new term to me. I'm not familiar with the term desire body. And I hear ego, I hear will, I hear all those things, but I haven't heard desire body. And then you're saying that creates someone who's spiritually powerful. Can you expand on that and tell us more about that?
Well, if the desire, let's face it, some people are really strong creators because they're so focused, and it's their mission. It's their every waking moment. I was like that when I was in the fire. It was my life. Yeah. And that was my desire. And I was doing things that were kind of crazy. Like I'd write down places I'd want to open stores, and I'd draw stars, and I'd visualize happy customers. And I was doing all these spiritual things unbeknownst to me. It was just working. But the desire body is an exceptionally strong energy. Now it can take us down the hole, take us down the rabbit hole, or it can take us up, depending on what we want.
Yeah.
How we express those desires. But it's so strong, itself. It's the element of fire. In fact, the seed atom for the desire body is located in the liver. And that is Prometheus with his liver. And it's so strong. But if you can turn that desire body from lower desires to higher desires, then that ultimately is the beginning of that shift. And ultimately, the desire body will take the forefront. It'll take the fore, because it's our most powerful and expressive body, and in service to God, it can really be quite beneficial.
So is it associated with one of the chakras, the desire body?
It's really associated with, I think, the solar plexus.
Okay.
It's interesting. If you look at the solar plexus, the navel, the sacral chakra, the root, these are all the subtle bodies. This is the solar plexus, etheric body, navel chakra, mental body, sacral chakra, emotional body, root chakra, physical body. And that's the order we got them in, by the way. First, etheric was a light body. Second was a mental body. Third was an emotional body. Fourth, and the desire body is like an aberration of the two, mental and emotional. I really want that. I really want that. So it's kind of like, it's really an offshoot of thought and feeling.
Okay, but you think it's different than ego. It's not this, because ego is about separation, but I think a lot of us conflate those two. We think of ego and desire as being the same thing.
Ego is affected by the desire body.
Yeah.
Literally hold captive. For some, it's held captive by the desire body. They can't get out of their own desires.
Yeah.
Really can't get out of their own way. And everybody, has issues, I think, or at least has had issues with desire body. Look, I know it's not good for me, but I just can't give it up. You know, or I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this, and sooner or later, my father was a simple man, and I admired him because he didn't need anything. Some say that the one who needs the least has the most, and so for that reason alone, he had my respect.
So do you think that the desire body is, how tied in is that to our ability to create and to manifest?
Really, I mean, it is the key.
Mhm.
It's the key to manifesting what you want. And I used to draw, write down where I wanted to go and visualize that. I was exercising my desire body.
Okay.
And interesting, the stars were the five elements. So we're all creatures of the elements. I mean, that's basically the foundation, the four elements plus prana or ether. So I think desire body is really it's the driver of your life, or the thing that doesn't drive your life. If you have low desire, no desire, then you're not really creating anything. So you have to have a strong desire body to be a strong creator, no doubt about it. And those creations can take any form.
Yeah.
They can be low, they can be high, they can be spiritual, they can be physical.
I think it's a really interesting question, because I was actually having this discussion with a friend of mine about, and I think especially for those of us that are female on the call, and maybe some of the men understand this too, but I think that ambition is something among women that isn't particularly encouraged, and that I think is a big part of the desire body that you're talking about. That I think for women, when women are ambitious, when we have strong wants, that it isn't something that's considered to be, it's not encouraged. It's not, we're not said, hey, go get go get it. You know what I mean? It's more, that's a guy thing for a lot of people. And I think
it's male energy, but it's the red knight energy. Most Western males operate under the archetype, the red knight archetype. And basically they're out there competing for everything they want, and unfortunately they don't know how to value anything, because it's the feminine energy that places value. And so the ambition is clearly a masculine energy, but men don't take any satisfaction in what they do. They can't. They have no way to do that. The male energy doesn't value anything, even themselves. So they're out there slicing away, red knighting until they can't do it anymore.
Huh. That's a super interesting perspective about that male energy doesn't value things, and that feminine energy places the value. I haven't heard that before. That is an interesting concept, and I can get that women do tend to, and not just women, but masculine, feminine energy. I know we're not talking about men and women.
We're both. That's right. We're both male and female. Everyone is.
Yeah, but that is an interesting idea, that the feminine energy places the value on things. So how would you extrapolate that a little bit more in terms of so if in terms of how they work together, that if the male energy has the ambition, the desire, and then the female energy says this is what's worthy. I mean, I know the female energy is the one that says that sort of comes up with the plan, says let's make this is where we should head, this is where we should go. But is that I guess that could be the same as establishing value, saying this is what's worthy, this is what's.
Yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't work quite like that, because feminine energy is relegated to the shelf in most men in their consciousness. A man cannot literally express his feminine because it makes him weak. In my neighborhood, where I grew up in Philadelphia, if you cried, it was the end of your life. So what has to happen? Typically, a man gets a wounding, and this is typically a wounding of love. He loves a little girl, they're 14 years old, and she doesn't love him. So he takes that love, but he doesn't, he finds no fulfillment. But that sends him out on a quest. The search for the cup of Christ was never about the cup. It was about what was in the cup, which was the blood of the Christ, which was Christ consciousness. So that's your journey. So a man typically runs on this red knight energy till he gets into his mid 40s, 45 to 50 is the critical age. And what happens is it should be at a time when his life is really going well. But the opposite's true. He doesn't feel that. So for a man to discover his feminine, he has to go childlike. So you've seen stuff like this where somebody will quit their job or go on a sabbatical, maybe they'll get sick. But the magic age is 45 and 50. I can't tell you how many men show up at Delphi between 45 and 50. That's when I got there. I was 47 when I showed up to school. And so the man goes childlike, and immediately his feminine shows up. And if he doesn't give her a play, doesn't give her an opportunity to express, she's going to turn ugly. As Shakespeare said, hell hath no fury, like a woman scorned. So the feminine energy has been relegated for 30 years. And so if the man is fortunate enough to open up to his inner child, maybe he quits his job. There was a funny movie with Bruce Stern called Middle Age Crazy, and he quits his job, buys a Corvette, and runs around with his high school football helmet on. He just lost his mind. But when he goes childlike, that's when the feminine shows up. And the feminine leads him to God. And then when the male is led to God, he evolves into his divine male, and then he brings the woman up along with himself. It was the point I was going to make. Jeez. I lost it. So the woman takes him there, and the man discovers himself. And then he's able to value himself. Okay. That inner feminine, she's on the shelf. She gets unruly after a while. She just doesn't want to take it. Look, I deserve to express myself too. The man, he keeps her at bay because it makes him weak, and you can't have that. He can't perceived as weak in the world, or he's not a man anymore. And so it's a vicious circle. But nonetheless, what it's designed to do is lead us back to the light, lead us back to God. So when the feminine leads him there, then he leads her to her environment. And the feminine needs her male. There are times when a woman's going to need, she's not going to be able to talk her way out of a problem. She's going to have to exercise her masculine power.
For sure. That's my whole journey has been about balancing my masculine and feminine energy. It's been my whole journey.
Join the club. That's how every one of us, and that was the mystical marriage. The Immaculate Conception had nothing to do with Mary being a virgin. It was about the sexless combination of the male and female within. That's the deal, the mystical marriage. And so, I love Mother Mary, by the way. She came in that first dealing with the I'm a devotee now.
So one question is, back to the idea of this evolution of humanity, is as we are moving through. So the way that you described it, was this: we started out as sort of consciousness, and then we started developing these different bodies to ourselves. That we started out, as you said, we started out with, what was it? Was it mental body? Where did we start?
First was the etheric body, the light body.
The light body, and then
basically we're occupying matter. Literally, we're right now occupying matter. But basically, it was about occupying matter and literally being in both places and being aware of yourself. And because we occupy that matter, it was the beginning of us starting to develop a sense of self. Nobody has a sense of self till they come into expression.
Okay.
No expression, no self. No expression, no existence. Truly. And so. And the only reason on ancient Saturn we were able to start to develop an ego, a sense of self, is because we burned at a little different temperature than the planet. Surprisingly, but that simple thing, being able to differentiate yourself from your environment, begins the development of an ego. Okay. And if you really want to accelerate the development of ego, be selfish. The easiest way to develop the self is being selfish, where your total focus is on the self. Yeah. And of course, that only works for so long. So, you have to, the human journey, first you have to create the self, then you have to evolve it. Because that's the steps, the 1-2. I call it the 1-2 punch. Make sure you punched yourself. You punch yourself,
So from Saturn, we had our etheric body. And then from there, we went on to
the ancient sun, we developed the mental body.
The mental body, and that was
more than that was happening. The archangels were in that. That was their. See, many beings, all beings, really, great and small, participated in the evolution, the human evolution. Even the monads, the first projection out of the Godhead, the monads, some are tasked with creating the physical matter, the stars, the planets. Others were tasked with creating the life forms that would occupy those planets. So they had different roles. And on the ancient sun, they started to develop form. And so literally they would show up on the sun. The sun back then alternated light dark. It wasn't constantly burning.
Huh.
And new suns all do that. They flame up and then they go dark. And when the sight came out, and all of a sudden the archangels saw on the sun saying, check me out, what do you think? And the animal kingdom of the zodiac evolved from that existence. So in the four primary cherubim who were modeling form on the sun, literally became the four fixed signs of the zodiac. Taurus the bull, Leo the lion, Scorpio the eagle, and Aquarius the man. And they say that's the same. Those four cherubim surround the throne of God, the throne of God. And if you ever go to Delphi, Greece, and you go to the museum there, they have a sphinx, head of a man, four legs of a bull, hindquarters of a lion, wings of an eagle. And this is a composite being representing those four cherubim that were modeling form on the ancient sun.
Oh, wow.
Another interesting thing too, each of those four fixed signs of the zodiac is a sigil of one of the evangelists, the writers of the Bible. Each one of the four, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, each one of them has one of those four fixed signs of the zodiac as their symbol.
Oh, interesting.
And there's stained glass windows in Europe that literally show that, reflect that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. So the zodiac, I used to like astrology when I was 18. What's your sign? What's your sign?
Yeah.
But it's interesting that there's a tie-in between spirituality and astrology. And, the planets govern many of our behaviors, our activities in life.
Yeah.
If you're an evolved person, you draw those higher aspects of the planetary bodies, so each one a great monad manifesting, the form and affecting us on Earth. And so if you're evolved, you draw those higher aspects. If you're unevolved, you draw those lower aspects. That's another reason to evolve. So a good reason, right?
So there we were. They were modeling form. We were developing the mental body. Then we moved on. Once we had the mental body,
Sun pulls out of the formation. Remember, this is a solar system. Sun pulls out of there.
yes.
And then what's left is what's known as the ancient moon.
Okay.
It's where everything condenses to water. They start pounding that heavy metal, heavy water with sound vibrations. Different life forms form up, the beginnings of different life forms.
Yeah.
The future human is now in a dream consciousness. So we're dreaming about being human. That's where our desire body got its real development.
Okay.
Man, we had active desire bodies, emotional bodies, and mental bodies before we had physical bodies. One big change that occurred on Earth, Atlantis was the final step in the physical body. And, you had for instance, all the civilizations pop up at the same time, 3000 BC, India, China, Egypt, Babylon.
Yeah.
They all show about within 100 years of each other.
Yeah.
More interesting than that, then you had a small group of patriarchs among the Jews: Abraham, Moses, and Solomon. And so that's you have a small group of people, and yet had so much influence on Western civilization. And what they brought to us and what they gave us was the development of the brain, of the mind. And Solomon was famous for what? Wisdom. Prayer of Solomon, God, Solomon, I'll give you anything you want. Solomon asked for wisdom. That was his request. Okay. And you know the story of two women claiming to have the same baby. He says, cut them in half. I can't figure out who's what. And of course, that's how he found the mother. So they gave us the development of the brain, of the mind. It wasn't very developed. It's something we had to develop ourselves and really evolve over millennia. And kind of interesting, in a Jewish family, the most important thing in the family for their children is education. This is a leftover. This is a leftover from ancient times where they were literally focused on brain development. So
Super.
that's another evolutionary step that we took along the way,
Yeah.
developing our mind.
So what do you think once we have so we're sort of going to be bringing, so the etheric body, which is kind of where we started, is what's now going to be rising again. So are we done developing bodies? Are we going to get any more bodies? Or do we have all of our bodies?
If we can handle the etheric and the desire body, we're home. Those are not going to be easy, and they're not going to be quick. They're going to, we're going to be limited by our group capability plus also our individual capability.
In terms of marrying the desire body and the etheric body, is that what you're saying?
The etheric will have to come first. The desire body will be the last one. Now, we're only in, if you read the Bible, they talk about 7 days of creation.
Yeah.
We just entered day 5. It's not over. The Bible, it's represented or represented in the Bible that, God had 7 days and rested on the 7th day. He's not done. The 7 days aren't complete. We've moved into day 5, which is the age of expression. Our Earth Day 4 was about developing love. Day 5 is about expressing that love. So some say the Earth won't be around that much longer. Nostradamus said 3,300. And the Earth evolution, it's basically almost complete. And 3,300 is not that far away. And so the more evolved ones are going to start reincarnating now in a different place. I think we teach at Delphi the 3 future incarnations of the being called Gaia, or who is now the Earth. She manifested all ancient Saturn, ancient Sun, ancient Moon, now the ancient Earth. So it's her 4th incarnation.
Oh.
So the next one is Jupiter, not the Jupiter we know. Jupiter, then Venus, then Vulcan. Gene Roddenberry did not make up the word Vulcan from Star Trek. No, it's part of the ancient mystery teachings.
Oh, how interesting. So the Earth then becomes what was the next one?
The being is going to become the being that manifests. Gaia is going to reincarnate. The planetary beings go through reincarnation too. It's called Parlaya, but it's much longer. It takes a lot, but much. So she's literally going to manifest as another planetary being.
Okay.
And the more evolved, the ones on Earth are going to get to go there. The ones that don't make the cut will be relocated to another place where they can continue their evolution based on their evolutionary status.
That makes sense, and that matches what I've been told, but I didn't hear the part about Earth reincarnating, and that's super interesting. That adds.
That will be day 5. We actually entered day 5 back in 2012. We all were waiting around 2012.
Yeah, exactly.
It's going to be the end all beat all.
Yeah.
I thought 2012 wasn't much fun at all. But a couple of things happened then that are notable. Number one, you had the long count calendar, the Mayan calendar. That wasn't the biggest event. That's a 5,200 year cycle.
Yeah.
But the last long count, the great civilizations I spoke about formed. So you had the long count. You had the precession of the equinoxes. The Earth is on an axis, and it literally rotates on that axis, and it aligns with each of the 12 zodiac constellations in its journey. It takes 26,200 years. That finished in December of 2012.
Okay.
Then you have the solar galactic rotation, which is fundamentally the rotation of the sun around the Milky Way. There's only one star that has a single solitary rotational path around the Milky Way galaxy. It's the Earth. All the other stars are grouped in constellations, not the Earth. It's a single star rotating around the sun. It takes 4.5 million years to complete that. That happened in the 90-day period at the end of 2012. And so we had other interesting things too. We had a Venus transit. That's every 120 years. The last Venus transit brought in the Industrial Revolution. The one before that was the Renaissance. So they're significant. So we had all these, and we had even more. We had radio waves coming out of the Pleiades. We have transmissions coming out of the center of the Milky Way. Many believe that the black hole, which forms the center of the Milky Way, is the void from which God came out of. I asked God why he came out once, I
Yeah.
said, yeah, it's a big mystery, right? God was in the void, man.
Yeah.
Really, all spiritual schools of thought acknowledged that God came out of the void. And so I said, okay, God, tell me true. Why'd you come out? And he said, Charles, I just couldn't contain myself. When you think about all the things that ever existed, will exist, or have existed, have always existed in the mind and the heart of God, including all of us.
Yeah.
Let us out of here.
Yeah.
We didn't have egos then, so we couldn't really say that. But kind of interesting. Here's guys reflecting upon himself. See, when God reflects upon himself, what does he see? His feminine, his opposite. Left is right, right is left.
Mm-hmm.
And literally from that reflection, the plan of creation or manifestation comes forward.
Mm-hmm.
From that reflection, God projects an internal part of himself, the Christ energy. And what is the Christ? So there's your Trinity, Father, Mother, Child. And what does the Christ energy do? The exact same thing, reflects upon itself, multiplies. And so the multiplication is coming out of that reflection. The Christ energy are the monads, the creators of the worlds.
Okay.
And every one of us begins as a monad. And now the monad projects part of itself into matter so it can fulfill its role in cosmic planet building or whatever it's just to do. So it starts to project a part, not all of it, just a part of itself to fulfill whatever that role is. The higher, then that projection of the monad projects the higher self, which each of us are aware of. It's our higher self that guides our life and also gives us the tests and challenges that make us better.
The monad projects the higher self?
Yeah, well, one step removed. The monad projects what's called the eternal self-aware soul. And that eternal self-aware soul is just like the higher self uses its soul or our soul to experience matter.
Yeah.
To fulfill its mission or fulfill its purpose. And so the monad, internal self-aware soul, higher self. And then the temporary personality, which is each of us.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot.
I know.
The more I know, the less I know. The more I learn, the less I know. I'm telling you.
Well, I feel like I could literally keep you here and make you talk to us all night, but we are over time, and I want to leave time for you to tell us about your book, please. So you just finished this book. Is all of this that we've been talking about in the book, or what is in the book?
A lot's in the book. The book is basically, it's called A New Day, and it's basically my story. It's in the story of, how I started poor and was successful as an entrepreneur, and I had everything the world said you're supposed to have. I had the mansion on the ocean. I had 6 German cars in the garage. I had everything you're supposed to have, and I was empty inside. And so I tell that story, but then I tell about the spiritual things I learned after that and along the way, the unfolding and how that all came. And I wrote the book. The book's 9 years old now. It's not fresh.
Oh, okay.
I'm actually thinking about redoing it, doing another version of it. It's either that or the Book of Healing. I'm torn between 2 lovers. In the book, it's much of what I learned to tell folks, much of what we talked about tonight.
Awesome. Is in there?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. That's great.
Talk about the forces of resistance, and I talk about the human evolution, human journey, and karma, manifestation, how to create what you want.
And the name of the book again is called The New Day by Charles Curcio. So that's great, because I know that we covered a ton of stuff today. And I know like a lot of you, including myself, kind of feel like there's a million concepts that kind of whizzed by. and you might want to go back and take a look at that book. But I want to thank you so much for joining us, Charles. This has just been awesome. I've loved it. I know everybody else has too. So I'm so glad you were. Well, I'm so glad you were able to figure out the Zoom link. So thank you for persevering.
My son saved the day. I had to call the cavalry. Fortunately, lives close by.
That is fantastic. That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much. And for those of you who are new joining us tonight for Wisdom Soup, you guys know we get together the second Thursday of every month. We have different speakers. And not all of them are going to be as awesome as Charles, but many of them are that awesome.
You're too kind. I see some of my friends there I see
Oh,
Christian. I see
fantastic.
Bob and Poochie Myers. Yeah.
Oh, good,
Actually,
good.
these are Delphi stalwarts.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks for
Poochie is
joining
an
me.
instructor at the school.
I got to come back out to Delphi. I got to come do another event there. Had such a fabulous time.
It's an amazing place.
It
There's
really
nothing
is.
like Delphi anywhere in the world.
Yeah, it's a beautiful experience. Well, thanks again. And thanks everybody for joining us. And we will see you again next time back at Wisdom Soup. Thank you so much, Charles. See you
I
soon.
think it's all. God
Bye, you
bless
guys.
you.
We're getting lots of thanks. Everyone's saying thank you.
Thank you. Good night.